What's up, guys? Welcome back to Everyday Money. If you've ever watched Dave Ramsey, and I've listened to a lot of his shows on the radio, I've watched some of his YouTube stuff, you guys know that he basically hates debt. He wants you to be out of debt, to be debt-free, to not have a mortgage, and if you do have a mortgage, be sure that it's on a 15-year note, not a 30-year or longer note. Buy all of your investment properties with cash and essentially never use debt ever. And what I really like about Dave Ramsey is the first half of his program. The first half of his program basically is for people who have absolutely no control over their money, over their finances, who have just gotten themselves in a world of hurt financially, and it helps people dig themselves out of those terrible situations. He says, pay for everything in cash, use envelopes to hold cash in order to save for specific things, get rid of all of your toxic debts, and those being things like credit card debts that have up to like 24% APR, interest rates, car loan debt, because that is a debt and expense that you're paying on a depreciating asset that you probably don't even need. A lot of people buy cars that are well out of their price range, but are loaded with luxury items that you do not need to get from point A to point B, because really nobody cares what kind of car you're driving. He talks about getting out of student loan debt, especially loans that were taken for degrees that really have no upside and no income potential, and any other type of personal debts. In addition, he recommends, if you have a mortgage, to take it on a 15 versus a 30-year note. And this is kind of where the wheels fall off for me, because the debt can be used in a lot of good ways, in a lot of ways to make a lot of money, and mortgage debt can be used, I think, in order to really limit your risk of loss, limit your risk of aversion, of running out of money in any given month by taking the 30-year versus the 15-year note. Now, what happened with Dave Ramsey, what made him kind of adverse to debt, is that he was purchasing investment real estate and using debt to finance those transactions. Now, I talk a lot on this channel about buying a residential real estate, using 30-year mortgages, fixed rate mortgages, and using debt to grow your wealth, to grow cash flow, to grow equity, and all the great things that there are to get out of real estate. And he was doing the same thing, except he was using extremely risky 90-day loans to finance his real estate. And so he would have to either refinance those loans every 90 days, or he would have to find the cash to pay those notes off and have those free and clear. Now, he amassed about a $4 million real estate portfolio before the savings and loan crisis hit. The market for those 90-day loans pretty much burst, and he was unable to refinance all of that debt and ended up losing all of it, filing for bankruptcy, and then took on this extremely negative outlook on debt as a whole. When you're looking at this from the first point of his program, fantastic stuff. I'm all about it, like I just said. But after that, when you start talking about using debt to make money and debt to finance a personal residence, this is where I strongly disagree with Dave Ramsey. And like anything else, this is going to work. Dave Ramsey's program is going to work for a certain subset of the population. People that aren't good with money at all, and probably will never be any good with money, and can't hang on to a dollar that they have. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. That's just the way some folks are wired. And then there's the way that I do things, and that works for another subset of the population. And again, it just depends on how you're wired and if you can take control of that money, even if you might have been in a bad spot before. But for example, on his 15 versus 30-year mortgage thing, he wants you to take a 15-year mortgage, and what that's going to end up doing is just making you have a much higher payment every single month. Now, yes, it will end up costing you more money over the course of the loan if you take that 30-year mortgage, but what you can do is take the difference between that 30-year mortgage and that 15-year mortgage, invest it into a very safe investment like a total market low-cost index fund, and the difference between that mortgage payment, say for on a $300,000 house, a 15-year note would be about $2,000 a month or so on a 2.5% interest rate, and that same $300,000 house would be about like $1,250, $1,300 on a with a 3% interest rate on a 30-year note. You can take that $750 difference between the two, invest those, and you would have the money to pay off that $300,000 house, and that's just $300,000, assuming that nothing got paid towards principal before the 15-year mark that would come up with your 15-year note. The benefit to this is that if anything happens in your entire life, in those 15 years, in those 2 decades that it would take you to do this, what you could do is you could, if you have the 30-year note, you could just stop investing that money, that's $750 a month. And this could be for job loss, health-related reasons, the government shuts down the entire economy, whatever, but having the flexibility of not making that $2,000 a month payment versus making a $1,250 a month payment is a big advantage in my opinion. And now once you get past that and you get into using debt to grow wealth, I personally use debt to grow wealth by buying investment properties. I finance these investment properties, but to use the bank's money. This is using other people's money, and I pay a very small amount. My interest rates on my investment loans for real estate right now are 3.25 and 4.375, locked in for 30 years. And those buildings are making me tremendous amounts of cash flow. Each one of my short-term rentals that I have these loans on, the mortgages for them are about $2,200 a month. I make anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 a month gross on each one of these buildings, leaving a gigantic spread of money left over after I pay my mortgage, even my utilities, and all the other expenses that go along with owning these buildings. And I would not have been able to purchase any of these rental properties, even probably the ones when I was much earlier in my investing career. I wouldn't have been able to purchase that without taking a mortgage, without taking a loan of some type, because these ones that I have now are about $500,000 each. And if you're out there on an average income like I have, the chances of you being able to save up $500,000 in any reasonable amount of time is unreasonable. Even if you have $100,000 to $300,000 a year income, with all the other expenses that you have, even if you live a very frugal life, you're still going to have your typical housing expenses, transportation, insurance, food. If you send your kids to school, there's just going to be a ton of expenses in your life, and it will be tough for you to save up in cash the amount that it would take for you to purchase even $200,000 building, a $500,000 building, $1 million building, that's going to provide you the opportunity to really grow your wealth, to grow your cash flow, to maybe allow you to quit your job, to get that building in your ownership so that you can benefit from the appreciation of it, and then still be getting paid back with note pay down by whoever the tenants or the guests are that occupy those. And so when you're using debt like that, using debt in a good way to grow wealth in a safe way, you're using solid low interest rate, fixed rate loans that really at these interest rates that we're getting today will probably not even keep the rate of inflation. I know this year that my buildings are going to be financed at rates significantly under the rate of inflation. I think that that's a pretty safe way to use debt to build wealth versus the extremely risky 90-day loans that Dave Ramsey was using. And then you can use debt in a lot of different ways outside of just real estate. If you want to start a business and you need to purchase a lot of business equipment, for example, let's say that you're doing something with like CNC machines or 3D printing or any type of printing, or you are a mechanic or just anything, you're going to need some sort of startup cost. In a lot of cases, if you're starting a business from scratch, that is going to be a significant amount of money. CNC machines are upwards of 6 figures each, and if you want to get into like 5-way CNC machines, you're talking about over $1 million. Even just buying vehicles for let's say you want to start a landscaping company, you might need a $20,000 or $30,000 business loan in order to purchase and finance a decently reliable used truck, trailer, some lawnmowers, things of that nature. And those are ways that you can use debt in order to build streams of income, to build wealth, to build cash flow. And it's not a bad debt like going out and financing a vacation on a credit card, purchasing a $70,000 SUV that you don't need to get back and forth to work, or anything like that where you would be hindering yourself with that debt versus helping yourself with that debt. So that is where I disagree with Dave Ramsey. I love the first part of his program, just getting your financial life in order. I am really against the other side of his program. As long as you can manage your money and use that in good ways, because there's a lot of temptation once you start amassing a lot of money to just go ahead and respend that, go back into all that bad debt, and end up back on the first side of that program. So guys, if you got something out of this today, please hit that thumbs up button for me. That really helps me out in the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe down below, hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything that I put out on personal finance on this channel. channel. I appreciate you guys watching today. If you guys are coming here from the Dave Ramsey stuff and you guys disagree with me, be sure to leave me something down in the comments if this has opened your eyes. Again, also leave me something down in the comments. In personal finance, there are no right or wrong answers. They call it personal finance because it is personal to every person that is involved in it. I appreciate you guys watching today, and I'll see you in the next one.